how do organizations like St. Baldrick's and independent efforts like ours, and as well as larger organizations, how can these people and these organizations support labs like yours here and other researchers?
Well, I can tell you already that St. Baldrick's has been hugely instrumental in supporting my efforts and really efforts to fight rhabdomyosarcoma across the world. So, when I started at UCSF as a pediatric oncology fellow, I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to study this disease when I got into the laboratory. But as luck would have it, there was no rhabdomyosarcoma lab here at the time. And so I was able to join up with some fantastic mentors who are incredible biologists. They're very smart medical oncologists themselves that treat other important diseases like lung cancer and melanoma. But I had to convince them, first of all, that rhabdomyosarcoma actually exists, because that's not a disease that medical oncologists or adult oncologists think about. And secondly, that it was a disease that had a really big clinical need and that we could address that need by using the same tools they were using to treat adult cancers. And being able to do that was much, much easier once I had the support of an organization like St. Baldrick's or other philanthropic funds to basically help support this research program and let me start buying the reagents that I need, start building the models of rhabdomyosarcoma cell lines and xenografts to really start asking these questions with the intelligence and the support of this larger research community here at UCSF.
So then it sounds like the research which is done for adult cancers is different from pediatric cancers. How is that? What is the crossover, or is there much? Or when folks think about funding cancer research, is it at all in the same bucket, or are they really different things?
I think that it would be a great thing if they were all in the same bucket, because there are lots of efforts that that fund adult cancers. But unfortunately, the more that we learn about the biology of these diseases, the more we learn what we should have known from the beginning, which is that childhood cancer is just different. The genetic changes that create the cancer are different. The patients themselves are very different in terms of how they tolerate the therapy and what sorts of treatments are going to work for them or which ones won't. Right now, we've historically been beholden to adult oncology when it comes to drug development. So drug companies are primarily creating drugs that are going to treat the most number of patients, and that means adult cancer. But you can't just take a breast cancer drug off the shelf and give it to a rhabdomyosarcoma patient and expect to see the same results. So we really think that delving into the biology of these cancers and then translating that across into drug development and then into the clinical trials, it just takes a completely separate effort.
So how is this change in awareness, how has that actually translated itself to what's happening in a lab if we're standing here today versus 5 years ago versus 10 years ago?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, the fact that I'm now able to start building my own laboratory, again, emerging from this period of working next to people who are studying lung cancer and melanoma, that only happened because I had research support from groups like St. Baldrick's. It also is helpful that when these sorts of advocacy organizations stand up and tell federal legislators and others that this is a need that needs to be addressed, then we know that there's going to be more of an interest in actually funding this sort of research. So again, I don't know that I would be able to sort of garner the support that I need to create an independent laboratory to study this disease without funding from organizations, without awareness building, and without that sort of broad support.
Then given where we are, and hopefully we'll be able to continue supporting this effort, and we can continue to as part of our awareness campaign, we can encourage more folks to be part of this. How do you feel? How's your outlook, your sense of hope and optimism for treating and curing childhood cancers? I mean, how is that changing, and how do you feel about things today?
So, I mean, some might accuse me of foolish optimism, because I just haven't been doing this as long as some of my colleagues. But I think if you actually look at the advances that have happened over the last 5 to 10 years compared to the last 20 to 30 years, we're really, really starting to move. I think that increasingly there are numbers of young scientists like myself, young clinicians, who are really motivated to start making a difference here. They're seeing that there's this groundswell of support to sort of help move where our treatments are today. I think there's also been a real incredible number of new developments in technology that are helping to push some of this. So the fact that we can now do genome editing in rhabdomyosarcoma cells here in the laboratory has certainly given us all sorts of hope for new treatments that we've previously overlooked. And I think that those are the sorts of discoveries that within 2 to 3 to 4 years will really start turning into new targets for drug development. And then we're sort of off to the races. So I would say that I'm very, very optimistic that between the numbers of young investigators who are engaging with this disease and the new treatments, or I should say the new techniques that we have in the lab to make the most out of rhabdomyosarcoma specimens, that we're really going to start to see changes in how we treat rhabdo in the next 5 to 10 years.
That sounds wonderful.